Board of Education meeting to order. We'll start the meeting by the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members have a copy of the agenda in front of them. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda, Mr. President.
We have a motion by Lynn.
Second.
Second by Brian. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. The next item is election of the board officers. And the process for doing this is we'll entertain calls for nomination. There will be 3 calls for nomination. Can be more than one person nominated. Second is not necessary. If only one person is nominated, unanimous voice vote for that person is cast and the person is declared elected. If there is more than one person nominated, voting shall be done by secret ballot, not by a show of hands, voice vote, or roll call. A majority of the ballots cast will determine who is elected. So, do we have any? We'll start out with the office of president.
Mr. President, I would nominate Dan Chernahoy for the office of president.
We have a nomination for Dan Chernahoy. Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations for president? No other nominations? Then all those in favor of Dan Chernahoy as president, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Dan Chernahoy is the president. The next officer position is vice president. Do we have a nomination for vice president?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Mark Kaiserschott for vice president.
Mark Kaiserschott has been nominated for vice president. Any other nominations? Any other nominations for vice president? Last call for nominations for vice president. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion's approved for vice president. Thank you, Mark. For treasurer, do we have nominations for treasurer?
Mr. President, I would like to nominate Mr. Brian Bell for the position of treasurer.
Brian Bell has been nominated for the treasurer post. Any other nominations for treasurer? Another call for nominations for treasurer. Last call for nominations for treasurer. If not, treasurer nominated is Brian Bell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. The nomination for clerk.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Tom Holland for the position of clerk.
Tom Holland has been nominated for clerk. Any other nominations? Any other nominations for clerk? There's no other nominations. All those in favor for Tom Holland for clerk say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. Thank you, all of those that were nominated for the officer positions for another year, and we certainly appreciate your service. Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes. April 14th, 2009 regular session, closed session, April 14th, April 15th, special board meeting, April 21st, special board meeting, and the April 28th special board meeting. Entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
Mr. President, I move that we approve all of the board meeting minutes.
Okay. We have a motion by Barb.
Second.
Second by Lynn. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. We'll move on to item 6 of the agenda, the reports. Use of tax increment financing district funds in 08-09 general fund budget. Tim?
Okay. I want to address the Rivercrest construction and operating budgets and dollars and how they were funded. I think there is maybe some misunderstanding, and hopefully this will clarify the misunderstanding. But if you look at the page 16 in your book, Rivercrest Construction, and this is, of course, the building of the school, was a total budget of $15,540,000. $12,040,000 came from the referendum, and then $3,500,000 came from fund balance. And underneath the $3,500,000, how we spent those dollars, we spent $700,000 in 06-07, $1,500,000 in 07-08, and then we budgeted $1.3 million for 08-09. We'll be under the 1.3 because we did school did come in underneath the total cost of $15,540,000. The next section down below talks about the operating costs, and those are totally different. These are the operating costs that we have for all of our buildings. And in the 08-09 general fund, the total budget is $51,399,000. And that includes costs for Rivercrest, and includes operating expenses such as positions, principal position, custodians, support staff, utilities, supplies, etc. And of course, 08-09, the 08-09 budget was our first year to include those operating costs in the budget. Down underneath that on the last line, you'll see the primary funding sources for our operating fund, and state aid, of course, property tax levy are the two largest, and then federal grants, and then we've got $929,000 of TIF district revenue that we used in the 08-09 year. Of the $1.8 million that we received, we used $929,000 of it in the current year's budget, and the TIF revenue really helped to offset mill rate, levy, etc. So that, being a transition year for the first year of having Rivercrest in that operating budget really helped in the transition for us. So that's a breakdown of the construction and how it was funded, and then the operating costs.
Tim, could you talk briefly about, just in approximate percentages, state aid, when you look at those funding sources, state aid, property tax levy, federal grants?
I would say I can speak to the two largest ones, state aid and the property tax levy. They're generally a 50-50 mix, but they do fluctuate back and forth depending on things like property value, student counts, etc.
The federal funds is
federal funds are a much smaller portion.
Any questions for Tim, Brian?
Yeah, just a comment. And then also with the additional TIF revenue, the revenue per member is higher, and that basically impacts us negatively. Thank you. Try to say that word about 3 times fast. So it impacts us and reduces the amount of state aid we get. So that's a further burden on our taxpayers on the property tax levy. So.
Any other comments, questions for Tim? If not, Tim, are you going to go on to the cash balance?
Sure, I'll go on to the next report that we've got. The next report, page 17, and this is operational funds. It's a low cash balance report. What we're demonstrating here is this is really looking at, in the left-hand column, it's going back to July of 07 through April of this year, and looking at our low cash balances. And we can see in the left-hand column our low cash balances. We have a rule of thumb calculation that we use. We like to have all of our operating funds added together. If you look at the average monthly expenditures and putting 10% on that, to keep a minimum cash balance of about 5.18 million. And you'll see the plan in our current budget for the 9-10 budget. We're talking about using $900,000 of fund balance. So if we take that out in this scenario that we presented here, the low cash balance after use of the fund balance, you'll see in the bold areas we do drop below our $5.18 million of cash balance. And the cash balance really represents, it's a portion of the fund balance that's available to spend. If we have, for example, a boiler go down, it's an unforeseen event. It's not something that we would normally budget for. This is where we're going to get it from. We need to dip into this cash portion of the fund balance to take care of any larger repairs that we do not that would be unforeseen. So and then we need to actually replenish it so that we have adequate cash balance. One of the things, again, that it helps us do is prevent operational borrowing. When we operationally borrow, we incur interest costs. Those are added expenses to the general fund.
Questions for Tim?
Tim, what's the value of the assets of the district? Do you have an idea of the hard asset value, property, building, replacement costs?
It's several millions of dollars, several millions.
Any other comments? When I look at this, Tim, the thing that, strikes me, and there's a lot of parallels with how we all run our households, is, there's certain times when, the balance is higher than others, and we have outflows of money going towards various expenses. So, it's pretty impressive here in terms of how we can be up, $10 million one month and be down close to $3 million another point in time. So it's really, when we're being asked about the fund balance, it's really a snapshot at any given time.
That's right. And we do fluctuate, like you say, Dan. We fluctuate wildly because we have, if you look at September of 2007, we receive a large tax payment and an aid payment, and then we go for a few more months with really very little revenue coming in. All the while, we're paying out expenses over those months where we don't have revenue coming in. So it's important for us to maintain a level of fund balance and a level of cash balance to bridge those times when we don't have a stream of revenue coming in.
Tim, can I ask a question? I know these discussions are taking place across the border with the Minnesota legislature and how they fund the schools through and dealing with their budget through shifts and delaying payments to schools, which could change this whole scenario if that were to happen in Wisconsin. Have we heard anything like that in Wisconsin?
I haven't seen a report directly, but have heard that they could be considering delays in funding our payments, but I don't have anything solid to go on.
Lynn?
Does the fund balance impact our bond rating?
Yes, it does. There is a rule of thumb, there are standards that the bond rating agencies look at for financial strength of school districts when we go out to borrow. And the fund balance does definitely does impact our bond rating.
Okay. There's no other comments, questions. We'll move on to the use of the federal stimulus funds.
Okay, again, page 18. And this presents the federal stimulus dollars, and the district received $1,072,000, or will be receiving $1,072,000 in stimulus funding. The stimulus funding comes via federal flow-through dollars, which are for special education, and those dollars are going to be used in special education, and what they will do is help to offset the support that's needed from the general fund. The other portion that we have is we are projecting a carryover from our 0809 Part B funding, and that's about $165,000. So we've got a total of about $1.2 million that we will be accessing. And again, the goal is to use the funding from the federal stimulus and Part B carryover for budget relief and staffing programs and operations for 1 year. Because the stimulus payment is a 1-year payment only, we will not be receiving it next year. We do buy some time with this. However, we do create a shortfall when we go into the following year, the 2010-2011 year. The categories where we've applied these stimulus dollars and the carryover from Part B, we've applied to the first 3 lines are supplies, staffing, and program and operations from special education of about $708,000. And then the balance are reduction of staff positions currently being considered for layoff. So again, with the funds coming into special education, they somewhat give some relief to the general fund as far as how much the general fund has to support special education. So the remaining $529,000 will be funded, will fund other special education operations. And down at the bottom, the estimated total cost of staff positions previously considered for layoff was $683,000. Using the $529,000 of federal stimulus, we have a remaining amount that isn't covered of approximately $154,000 for staff for position layoffs.
Anything else, Tim, on that?
I'll probably add the goal. One of the criteria for the stimulus funding was that it be put to use swiftly to prevent layoffs of staff, and that's exactly what we're doing here in this plan. And of course, I would add that any reductions, if we have reductions in general education, they also impact special education as well. So there is a relationship there between reductions in general education and special ed.
Okay, any questions, comments for Tim?
I'm just going to say, Tim, you say we don't have the money yet, right?
We'll be applying. There's an application process to go through.
What's the time frame looking like?
We'll
idea?
We'll start to apply for the money. We can actually start to eligible to receive money now, but we're working with special education and Dr. Rapun on the application process.
Thanks.
Tim, is it my understanding that it's been earmarked for this district? That amount has been earmarked by the state?
Right. The $1,072,000 is a solid number.
Yeah.
Tim, regarding the carryover from 0809, you're fairly comfortable with that projection?
Yes, we've run some projections. I mean, and talked to Dr. Rapun, and we've been consulting with each other to arrive at that dollar amount.
Okay. Good. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to item D, state budget deficit update.
Well, we continue to get information on the condition of the state budget deficit. In fact, we received updated information today, and unfortunately, the budget deficit at the state has gotten worse. They're projecting about a $6.6 billion deficit at this point, and that's up from the 5.7, and that the number prior to that was smaller, so it's kind of growing as we've gone along here. Much of it is due to income and corporate income and individual income taxes being down much more than they had anticipated. Some of the other issues that the district and all districts will be facing is we have a possibility of a Wisconsin retirement system rate increase that will take place by 2014. And there are some other Senate and Assembly bills that are being proposed, and I won't go into those into detail. But that's the update that we have at this point.
Okay. Comments, questions for Tim? Tim, can you talk a little bit about just sort of the legislative process? I mean, I'm guessing that that's going to be coming, the certainty at the state level is going to be beyond when we're, making decisions or having to make decisions about the budget.
Right. The hope, there was some hope that possibly with the deficit at 5.7 billion, that there was a possibility that they would come through with a bill in June. That was what we had been hearing, but because of the increased deficit, that's really changed the picture, and I guess the hope that there's a final budget bill out there by June becomes much more remote. And we have seen it before where, and I want to say probably the last biennium, where there was a delay, and actually some districts lost dollars, including Hudson, because of that delay in passing a budget bill. So we do expect that this is going to be something that will possibly go to the wire, which means October.
Okay.
Just one comment. It's also true, Tim, isn't it, that large groups of state employees will be asked either to give up a raise or, in effect, have their wages frozen. Isn't that right? There was a communication put out. I believe it was the university system. Some of their employees, there was a increase in pay slated for, I believe, June 1st, and that's now going to be rolled off the table as they start to work through and try to again plug the gap. I guess the other important thing that I wanted to mention too is prior to this new deficit figure the governor was looking at. It was using the stimulus dollars that the state was receiving to really hold our funding level. Now they're saying that there will be cuts to our aid. K-12 districts will receive cuts in aid.
Tim, just a clarifying question. You're saying that the cuts to the aid now are presumed because of the increase in the deficit from the 5.7 million to the 6.6 that they talked about now?
Right.
Okay.
And do we know what that will be?
No, I wish I did. I wish we. Again, until they work through the budget bill, we're not going to know the details of that and how they may tweak tweaking the formula. There's a lot of different things that they can do to adjust their dollars.
Okay. Let's move on to consideration of program operations staff reductions for 09-10. Is that Mary?
It is, with some help from the directors. I just want to review again the reasons why we're considering this reduction. We've kind of talked about a number of those, but just to recap that, we anticipate a loss of state aid. Originally, the estimate that we have started with was 1.5 to 1.8 million. And as you heard this evening from Tim, we could expect that to even increase. We also have know that this is created by a number of factors. It's created by the addition of that TIF district, and Brian, you talked about what that does to our tax base. And then also the state budget deficit that Tim just referred to. And I'm not sure we mentioned this again, but that slower student growth as well. We have a loss of interest revenue that we've estimated at around $200,000 as well, adding into that. So it comes at a time when our community is experiencing tough economic times, and some in our community have lost jobs, income, savings, and wages as well, and their homes. With a reduction and some adjustments in the budget, the original budget of $1.3 million, adding $900,000 from the fund balance, this still has resulted in an increase in our mill rate, estimated at 9.5%. And again, based on the assumptions we've been using, we might even see that increase as a result of the state budget deficit increasing. With everything that we've done up to this point, before we make any further decisions, the budget is really a decrease of 2.27% in non-salary and benefit expenses. So if we look at all that, the board and administration have agreed that an increase in the mill rate of this magnitude at this time, and with what our community is experiencing, that's unacceptable. As the administrators and I have gone out to various schools and talked to staff, a question that comes up is, is our community really experiencing the same kind of economic conditions that others in the country may be? And just one point of evidence is the March 2009 unemployment rate. Looking at that and looking at St. Croix County, a year ago at this time in March, the unemployment rate was 5.0%. And then in January, it was this January 2009, 7.6%. February, it was 8.8%. And the last, right now, the data that we have is March, and it's at 9.8%, still escalating. And that's compared to the national and the state average of 8.5%. So again, this would be one indicator that our community is experiencing tough economic times. In April, the board narrowed the list of programs, operations, and staff positions being considered to the list that we presently have this evening, and I believe that's been distributed. The priorities that we've used to make decisions continue to be HSD system for learning, continuing and maintaining our academic excellence, HSD 2025, progress towards that long-range vision, and then operations to support initiatives and safety, security, and excellence. So our purpose this evening is to prepare for the final decision-making that you have as a board in June 9th. We're going to provide some additional information for you, answer questions, and then also determine what other information that you need to make that final decision, so we can prepare that for you in anticipation of your decision. The review process that we'll use, since you've had time to look at this material ahead, we're not going to go through each item individually. There will be some that the directors and I will highlight, and then certainly we'll take it page by page, and any questions that you have on any of the other items or the items we addressed, we'd like to address those at that time. And I think we'll just get started with page 1. So this is on programs and operations that are under consideration for reduction, and the one we want to talk about here is E, reduce utilities, and Tim, you're going to address that.
We've made some pretty substantial reductions to our utility budget, and I think it's important to remember we are going through an energy reduction program, working with energy managers looking at ways that we can reduce our overall energy use. And but the program is really in its infancy. We just it's a program that was just started a number of months ago, and so for us to fully realize savings is going to be over a period of years. And so the reductions in utilities are pretty aggressive, and if energy costs go up, there's a strong possibility that we may not meet that budget. And if we do not meet the budget, if we have an overage on our budget, then it comes out of fund balance. So I think it's important to remember that it's a pretty lofty goal to reduce the utilities that much at the beginning of our program, but if we don't meet it, it will have to come out of fund balance.
Are there any questions from board members on this page, the items?
I guess if I could just ask the athletic budget reduction of 15%, what's been the feedback from those in the athletic department regarding how they're going to handle that? That seems like a rather substantial bite. Has it been indicated that that will indeed be manageable?
Stephanie DeVos, our athletic director, or Ed Lucas, do you want to address that? If you come up to the microphone and...
Stephanie and I sat down and looked at the athletic budget together, and Stephanie determined that the best place to make the initial cuts would be in our supply budget, and I'll let Stephanie address those issues.
With the input from the coaches, the majority of them said that this is the area that they wanted to cut first. And in order to maintain our schedule and keep the competition level to where it currently is, supplies is where they wanted to make the cuts, and not the scheduling or the staffing. So this was what the majority of the coaches wanted.
And do you think they can do that?
For 1 year.
Okay. I just, one of the things that is, I guess, going to be a priority for me is that the pain, if you will, is spread around. And so when I see a particular area that seems to have a fairly large slice, I mean, it's certainly a question I'm going to ask. Because, it'd be my hope that, we will spread it around. And well, I'm glad to hear that, Stephanie. Thank you.
And most of the coaches were supportive of each other. And I know they're pretty understanding. If there's something emergency-wise that a coach will need, and another coach doesn't need, something as near as much, they're going to be supportive of each other.
Okay.
I just have that. That's the feedback that I'm getting.
I'm glad to hear that. Let me ask you this: the 15% number, is that the number the coaches came up with, or was that the number the coaches were directed to try to save?
Actually, the 66,000 was an estimate that was needed by the administrative team. So that's a number that we came up with.
Okay, so you were told to find 15% to cut.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
One of the reasons that we stayed away from looking at getting into the contests was because in order to keep our program competitive, when we get to the WIAA tournaments, the WIAA does a seeding process, and the seeding process is based on the competition that takes place within Wisconsin. So we had talked about cutting back on possibility of cutting back on some of our longer trips, but then that would force us to go to Minnesota, which would have an impact on the seed and our competition. So we felt that this was for the first year, this was the best action and best direction to proceed. Okay. Thank you.
One of the responses that Stephanie talked about is, and it's not only in this athletic budget, but in many other areas as well, is we've looked at these reductions for 1 year, and they will have to be revisited after that time to see the impact they have as an ongoing reduction if we need to do this in the following school year. Any other questions on this page? Mary?
Does it impact fees to students?
Tim, you want to address that? Because I know that comes up later in our...
Sure, yeah, these were expenditure cuts. So we do have, later on in the agenda, the proposals for athletic fees, athletic fee increases.
So this specific amount does not, but we will be addressing that later. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next page. Well, and my computer isn't letting me move on to the next page. So let's start with Nancy, and she's going to talk about F, reduce high school transportation area.
This particular proposal would affect high school students, approximately 70, who are now eligible for bus transportation within a 2-mile distance from the high school. There's a considerable area of multiple neighborhoods across Vine Street, across from the high school, who previous years ago, a number of years ago, and several times, those neighborhoods were declared hazardous, not because they have a particularly dangerous traffic pattern in the neighborhoods, but because of the student crossings to the high school. And that particular declaration of hazardous has been under reconsideration a number of times. And the need to find cost savings gave us some impetus to pursue this particular issue that had been previously questioned anyway. This would not affect ridership of middle school students, and it would not affect ridership of eligible elementary students. These students are riding only because of the designation of the neighborhood, and otherwise by policy would be walking. And the ridership of high school students is much less than middle and elementary, and is less predictable, but the buses need to be provided anyway. And how we would offset this, since then, there's a couple of things that have happened. One is that the high school now uses the St. Pat's parking lot, so we have a considerable number of students who drive, who park their cars there and walk across Vine whenever it looks like they can cross, you know. And so we've got this irregular crossing of students already. And we have a considerable amount of bus congestion. You know, as the high school has grown, more buses coming from all over the district impact that intersection. So we feel this is a very reasonable proposal. We have already made an application. There's a process through law enforcement in the area and through the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. We've already made the application, and the $115,000 it's a net estimated reduction for a bus or two. We think 2. It could go as high as 3, but we're basing it on 2. And then we are proposing the possibility of adding crossing guards on 2 at the Vine Street, Wisconsin Street intersection, right across from the high school, and the Vine Street Grandview intersection. So that students right now and in the future, if this were to be approved, would cross safely, more safely, and it would also reduce the congestion at that intersection. Dave?
Nancy, question regarding these displaced students. Is it at all possible they could start driving?
They could start?
They could be driving, creating additional parking issues for us?
Certainly they could, and they probably would anyway. You know, when they reach that age of 16, we have a very large number of our high school students who drive vehicles, and that's undeterred really by the whether or not busing is offered or not. But certainly there would be more walking, and there would be perhaps some more driving, but I'm not sure about the driving. I think they might drive anyway.
Do we have this, is there the space available for additional cars, if that were the case? Or what, I'm just curious, what are our options there?
Well, we have quite a bit of competition for our car space.
Yeah.
Now, it's 71 right now is we have names associated with the 71 students, and not all of them are, of driving age.
Nancy, what do we?
But I can look into that if that's something you'd like to
I'm
know more about.
I'm within 2 miles, and
Oh, I know.
I know this one
Yeah.
person won't walk.
Won't walk, yeah. And walking is good.
Yeah, it
Walking
is
is a
good.
good thing. Okay.
Nancy, what do we pay for the
I can
use
look
of
into
the
that.
St. Pat's parking space?
I'm not sure we pay for it. Do you know, Tim? We do lease the use of the
Right.
park,
We-
the St. Pat's lot, but I'm not sure what the fee is.
I'm going to pass. If you want to know that, we can
find
look it
that
up,
out,
though.
too.
Just going back to walking or riding, driving to school, certainly we would encourage our students to carpool and to reduce the amount of vehicles coming to the site. And we have limited the number of cars, the spaces that we have because of space, and we'll have to continue to do that.
Well, except that, we can't forget about the fact that some of our more creative scheduling is encouraging students to have an alternative transportation because they're opting to take 0-hour classes. They're opting to take online classes some days and come in an hour late. And so, we are in many ways encouraging students who, to find alternative ways to get to school at times when we're not offering. So I think, when we talk about the amount of parking, I think it's important for us to keep that in mind because I think we're going to have to ensure that we're prioritizing parking for those students who are using those alternative schedule options.
And you are right that we do have some students with those alternative schedules. Generally, they're upperclassmen.
Nancy,
Okay.
is the 2-mile distance also used for students that live north, east, and west with the same criteria?
Those students walk.
Is it?
Yes,
is there
2 miles
2
is the
miles?
policy for our older students.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Did you say, Nancy, when this became a designated hazardous area?
It's several years ago,
Okay.
quite a few years ago, but as the neighborhoods built, then additions were added to it. And of course, the road has been improved, the intersections have grown, and again, we've overflowed across the road into the St. Pat's parking lot.
And so there is a sense now that you mentioned about the traffic flow has been improved, or
Mhm.
something's been. There's some reason to expect that we would get this undesignated as a hazardous area. We're reasonably optimistic about that.
Yeah, it was at our initiative it was done to begin with. No one
Oh, I see.
else really
Okay.
initiated it. It was at our initiative.
Okay, because I'm thinking the car count is
Mhm.
probably even higher than it was a few years ago.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do have more kids crossing
Mhm.
already, especially those 2 intersections, and they're crossing on their own.
Okay.
We think this is probably a better
So-
thing to do.
So we petitioned to have this a hazardous area. And
We did originally,
Okay.
yeah. We
And-
did
and it-
originally, and we can initiate to waive that as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
But this, again, I want to make certain you know that the 115,000 is offset if we were to proceed with safe crossing safety guards, the crossing guards, yes, the crossing guards. If we would proceed, that amount is deducted from what we would save by reducing the busing, just for
Understood.
high school students, not for middle or elementary.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Nancy, just one more thing. Of the 71 students that that are in that affected area, do you have a sense for how many of them actually do ride?
Well,
Is there a way to measure that?
we do account. Because they're eligible to ride, you need to create bus space for them. But it varies. More ride at the beginning of the year than they do later because they become eligible to drive. And again, they drive whether they have a bus available or not. And it does vary, but it's a certain percent of those students. We do have that record, and I can let you know that. We have that record. It's kind of like the fund balance. You have a low and a high, So I can certainly let you know that. But it is just a percentage of those students that actually ride.
Okay, should we move on to the next item?
The next one to address is H, reduce capital projects. Tim?
The reduction of $330,000 is a very substantial reduction in our capital projects. So we will be deferring some of these projects, things like carpeting, flooring in rooms. Summer projects are going to be scaled back significantly, and it doesn't leave us much room for anything that would come up as an emergency. And again, if we do wind up in that situation, we would have to probably go back to fund balance to fund something like that, because we're substantially cutting the budget here.
Any questions for Tim?
Tim, I think in our assessment of this, though, we are guarding against anything that would have potential safety hazards or a risk involved, and not cutting those areas, but cutting areas that we feel like are more cosmetic and things like that from a
Right.
Facilities and Grounds Committee perspective.
Yes, I would say you're correct, Tom.
Okay. Move on to the next item.
Well, any other, we're going to move to Sandy. Sorry, I almost missed the ones at the bottom of the page. M and N, I think she's going to address both of them together. Correct. This is decreasing the June 2010 elementary enrichment summer school and the middle school enrichment summer school. The amount that we have listed there, $3,000, has been adjusted to $5,000 for each one of those items, M and N. So if you'd make that note. And Sandy?
All right. Most of us are aware that just 1 to 2 days after school ends, we begin a summer enrichment program at both the elementary and middle school level. At the elementary, we offer things like going buggy, computer, chess, and dramatics. And at the middle level, iMovie production and jewelry making. It took us a while to figure out, my office working with financial services, the amount that we could put in for reduction, because the funding for this summer school is quite complicated when you take in state aid, general fund, student fees, the fact that it's over 2 fiscal years, etc. So we've been working to look at what we can do, and we have a pretty good handle now on what we can do as far as trying to keep our student numbers up, which generate the aid, but lower some of our district costs by just really looking at the numbers, the student enrollment, and eliminating classes that are most likely below 10 and 12, maintaining our special ed programming, but really looking at those enrichment courses where that enrollment falls below 10 to 12 students, and asking those students then to come up with other selections. So for both programs, that's what we'll be doing already this June.
Any questions for Sandy?
Sandy, is the possibility to consolidate some of those kids into another program from another school as an option for them rather than eliminating it?
Currently, we only offer the elementary program at North Hudson and Rivercrest, so we already have it down to 2. That is something we're talking with Tim's office about next June. Would we even make more sense to hold it at one site? But there are pieces where when students register, we do ask them for their priority choices and alternatives. So that's where we'll be looking in the next few weeks to look at low numbers and then asking those students for alternative choices.
I think we have to consider what Tom said fairly seriously. If we can offer these summer courses at one site and then by reduce the cost of lighting and cooling and janitor use and all of those other things at a whole building. I think that can add up kind of substantially, in a summer program like that. And I think probably one of the other things that maybe we could consider is that right now we have our elementary programs and our middle school programs. It's possible that if we were giving a jewelry making course, you know, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders could take it together. 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th graders, really even, I mean, or 5th, 6th, 7th graders. You know, we can maybe play with consolidating some grades, you know, in some, right in that middle area. That might also be a way that we can continue to offer classes like the jewelry making or especially some of the more artistic, not required but elective interests. A lot of times this is the time when a kid can do those things. And I know that a lot of kids benefit from being able to, you know, squeeze in something that they normally wouldn't be able to do during the regular year because they're offered. So I hate to say that if the classes, you know, if there's 10 5th graders and, you know, 10 6th graders, why are we canceling those instead of consolidating and making that work for our students? I think that's really important for us to watch.
Any other questions on that page? Items? All right, let's move on to the next page. All right, let's start at the top, and let's see, Sandy, you're going to address, eliminate district budget for K-12 media centers, use common school funds only.
Correct. As mentioned during the listing session, Wisconsin schools are very fortunate that they are highly funded by the state with the common school funding for our library media centers. This year we received approximately $214,000 to support our media centers. And that's based on, Tim can help me out, but a lot's based on student enrollments. We're not always sure until into the year what our funding will be. But again, approximately $214,000. Some of our sites have additionally brought some of our general dollars into those to support with some other funding. And that is the piece, as you can see, $7,000. Then we would reduce any district dollars to support the media centers for next year.
Questions for Sandy? And any questions on the mentoring item? Just a note, the programs and operation total has been adjusted because of the summer school adjustment. So that total would be $889,800. So moving on to the next page, this is staff positions under consideration for reduction. And certainly, if it wasn't for the budget constraints that we have right now and we've described this evening, we would not be considering any staff reductions. These are losses to us. The staff positions represent people that are in those positions, and certainly they're the most difficult of any decisions for us to make. We started with an estimate cost with an original list of approximately $680,000 worth of staff layoffs or potential layoffs for consideration. And use of the stimulus funds that Tim described and through attrition, both resignation and retirement, we've been able to reduce that to $154,000 of reduction that you're considering. Still, it affects people who are in positions. 3 of the positions certainly are employees and those we value. So looking at that list, we'll start with the first one. And Sandy, the media specialist position.
We currently have on the list eliminate 1 media specialist. This is here because of a resignation, which allows us to eliminate this position without a staff layoff. This will result in 5 remaining media specialists, 5 FTEs to cover the 6 buildings. The principals are working together to come up and create a modified schedule that will make sure that there's equitable service for all of our students. Tomorrow morning, we have a late start, and some of the principals are meeting with this media specialist to look at solutions and to look at options that still could be considered. They are ensuring us that the media centers will be open during instructional hours in all 6 buildings, and we have looked at other districts, at other models of delivery, and just recognize there are other models of delivery when it comes to our library media centers that we have reviewed and have brought to the table.
Questions for Sandy? All right, moving on to the next one, reducing part-time custodial time. Tim?
The reduction in custodial time is really coming from a couple of different areas. About half of that amount that you see there, the 45,000, is going to be recouped through eliminating our summer help, and those are the folks that do a lot of work on the during the summer for grounds maintenance and improvement. The balance of that reduction means that one part-time custodian and hours of another part-time custodian will require a layoff. The reduction in part-time custodial cleaning time will result in a lower level of service than we have enjoyed and or come to expect in the past. We do have a primary reduction in cleaning frequency at the Administrative Service Center. The person will not be coming in every night. They'll be cut back to about every other night.
Questions for Tim? The next one is eliminating a .32 teaching position at the high school. Sandy?
The teacher involved in this position has transferred into another position, so this does allow no layoff as a result of this decision. Currently, the license that is required for this area is very difficult for us to secure a part-time staff member, and we have looked at the classes. There are approximately 60 students a semester that will need to come up then with other choices, work with counselors. I have looked at many of our elective classes. There is space so that those 60 students could move into other electives, and then we would still maintain our class size guidelines.
Questions? All right, the last one in this.
I think
oh, I'm sorry, Cindy.
Is there an expectation that we will try to continue
Yes.
theater arts in the district, maybe beefing up the extracurricular that doesn't require us to have a certified person, or and in the future, what can we expect for these classes?
Yes.
I really hate to see them go at all.
Correct. I'll be working with high school administration to look at options like you've stated, as well as looking at future. How can we bring this back into the high school, and what do we need to do to create a position that is viable in order to find a qualified person?
All right, the next one, reduce secretarial assistant time. Nancy?
This particular position would be a partial staff layoff. This is currently an 8-hour-a-day position, and this would be a reduction of 2.25 hours per day. So 5.75 hours per day would remain intact. The position has several different duties, one of which is receptionist, and that is the portion of the position that we're reluctantly proposing to reduce. How this would have, and this is at the Administrative Service Center, so it's the receptionist part of this position duty. Visitors now check in with a person, at the door and are assisted and directed. With this reduction, then visitors would no longer sign in, and we would introduce some signage, and they would, find the particular office that they're looking for through signage. This part of this person's position also is to answer the general phone line calls, and again, help people, and if unable to do so, to refer the calls to the appropriate office. And what we would plan to do would be to rotate these calls through our existing offices.
Nancy, the majority of this savings then in dollars is coming from the elimination of this person's benefits, not necessarily from the hourly wage that we would save.
Yeah, and that's true for all of the positions reflected here, or for several of them at least.
It looks like most of these positions that we're talking about are either a part-time person who's not already, isn't receiving benefits now, so they'll be losing hourly wage, but not a whole benefits program, or they're a person where we're eliminating or not filling a position, so that there's not a person who's actually losing their health care.
Yeah, in terms of the the health insurance benefits, certified teacher positions, it needs to be 20 hours a week, so that would apply to the first position would be eligible.
Okay, but that's we're just doing a non-fill.
Right.
So there's not a family losing benefits
No,
there.
but the funds are reflected as benefits as
Right.
well as salary.
So in terms of the actual people who work for us, this double D here is the only one in all the people that we employ, in all the positions that we're not going to fill or that we're no longer going to fund. This is the only person who's really just having their benefits taken because they're not full-time anymore. Is that correct?
I think so. I think that's probably true. I'm looking at Tim there, who's more familiar with the custodial piece.
Right. The part-time custodial staff a lot of times don't qualify for the health insurance, so there are the cost there is mainly wage.
Okay, well, I have to say something, because I just find, and I know it's going to be distasteful and you're not going to like to hear it, and I don't want to be critical or put you in a bad position, but I find myself in a bad position with this because I find the reduction of somebody's hours by 0.2 something is really all the work and all the wage and taking really their benefits away. And I find that to be, I have challenges with the ethics of that from the standpoint of being a good employer. I think if you're going to take a person's benefits and still have them working 30 hours or 35 hours a week, I think that's exploitive. So I really can't. I wish we could do that another way. I think we should come up with another way to do that. I find that not acceptable.
Any other questions on the positions?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just a comment. I want to, I guess, restate my objections to any staff layoffs or reduction at this time. I think I expounded on the previous meeting, but I think these have real impacts. That you just can't convince me that we're serving our students by reducing a media specialist, by elimination of the drama program, and it's always seems to be easy to, bounce on the backs of secretarial and custodial folks who are some of our lower paid employees. And I just don't think it's necessary at this time. I think there are other options. As I've stated before, somewhere down the line, layoffs could certainly be necessary. We got a budget issue that's obviously quite severe and hasn't fully played out yet. But considering the impact that these are going to have on individuals, I'm just not ready to throw them under the bus at this time. I don't think we should.
Well, and I do want to acknowledge, because I'm kind of taking a harsh stand on this, but I want to acknowledge that one of the reasons that we've done this at this time is because we do have a legal requirement to make preliminary notification. So, the calendar really dictated that we had to give some people a heads up. And I'm still going to be fighting for these jobs. I just think it's important. So just because these are what's left on the table at this time, when we had to give people preliminary warning, doesn't in any way mean that I'm supporting these layoffs in the future. I'm going to fight for these guys. So.
Can I ask a question on the media specialist? And I don't know if Mary can speak to it or if one of our principals wants to speak to it, but we have a lot of initiatives focused around literacy, and I want to know how that layoff would impact our goals and how they relate to HSD 2025. And I don't know who can do it, but I want somebody to speak to that.
Of course, our media centers do play an important role with our work in literacy. Many of the students have been trained on finding their just right books, so when they open up the books in the library to check out, they're making sure that they have supplemental pieces to bring home, as well as a few of our media centers. Also, the media specialists have taken the initiative to, in essence, kind of level many of the books in their library, which also assists students to find those just right books to bring home. Again, our reason behind this is more that it resulted in no layoff at this time, and we felt for 1 year we could make things work with 5 FTEs over the 6 buildings.
Thank you. I guess, go ahead, Tom.
Just wanted to make a comment that $154,000 in a $51 million budget is a very small percentage. And the assumption is, and I know the administration, I know the administration has done, I think, due diligence and studied this and scoured this, because I know how much you care about our team in this district. But the assumption would be that we've looked under every stone and have identified every possibility and have gotten down to $154,000, and we can't find anything more, and that this is our last resort. And I'm not sure we've done that or not, but I would certainly want to go through that exercise if that we look for $154,000 someplace else, rather than reducing our eliminating staff positions, our hours. So.
We have gone through an arduous process of doing this over time. And as you will remember, we had a list of programs and operations that went through multiple levels. And an earlier decision was made to look at level 1 and 2, which had the least impact on the priorities that were established. Certainly, we share your concerns about the staff members that are affected by these positions, and that is one of the main reasons that we looked to use attrition for these positions. It does not mean that at some point in the future we may choose to fill those, but right now this doesn't affect anybody else. That doesn't help the 3 people it does affect, certainly, but we have worked diligently to try to make this the least impact. And again, for the 3 people that are impacted, it means a lot.
I just want to echo what Tom said, I guess, and maybe expound on a little bit. I can't see laying off $154,000 worth of positions when you're looking at our total budget, and what $154,000 would have a very minimal impact on the mill rate. So I guess I would echo Tom's statements as well, and Cindy's and Mark's. We know all of these. The thing is, I don't think over the years, the few years I've been on this board, I don't feel like we have approved positions in the district that we didn't think were absolutely justifiable, that didn't absolutely have an impact on the quality of our kids' education. So I don't really think of any of the positions or the people in our district necessarily as expendable. So this is not like trimming fat. This is like gouging deep into flesh. That's what we're doing here. And when we look at the cost of programs, I guess I don't mind putting a ream of paper on hold for a year, nearly so much as I mind, taking these really important people who have their direct influence on the well-being of our kids. I just think that I like that so much of what we're looking at is program and operations, and so little of what we're looking at is personnel. I really have to say that I support that approach wholeheartedly. I'd like to see us cut a little deeper maybe on the program side if we have to, in order to cut a little less deep on the person side. And not that I don't value every single one of these programs that we're talking about. Every single one of them has value. So it's not like we're saying, when you say, you know, first tier and second tier, we're not talking about any of this being less than really important. I don't think any of us think that way. So that makes it hard. But I'd like to see us pay a lot more attention to the stuff side, where we can cut stuff.
We have to remember that the bulk of our budget is in staff salary and benefits. Mm-hmm. And that makes it difficult for us when we look at reductions to not even more directly affect more students. So it is a challenge for us, and that's what we've been facing. We certainly wish that the 154,000 that represents the people that we've talked about were not impacted. And we've really tried to address your concerns about the mill rate and try to balance that with this. But again, we share the sentiments that you have stated as well.
Mayor, just one last comment. I know you share those sentiments, and just a reminder to all of us is that one thing that I'm very proud of about this district is that when it comes to cost per student, we are in the very low end across the state compared to other districts, and then in the performance side, we're in the upper echelon, and so that's great value for our community taxpayers. But it also indicates to us that, as Cindy has said, you know, we're not fat. We're lean already. So it adds to the challenge. It's something we were proud of. I think, at least I'm proud of. But it's not making this exercise obviously easy either.
Well, we've taken the most time on this page because it's the one that is most difficult, certainly. And we can move on to the last item if you're ready to do that. All right, Tim, you're going to talk about the wage and salary under consideration.
Right. The $1,033,000 represents a wage freeze for all employees. It's all employee groups, including administrators, to reduce layoffs and in consideration of the taxpayers. The way we arrived at the dollar amount is that it's based on a concept of a hard freeze, meaning that for certified staff there'd be no lane or step advancement and no increase on the cells. For other staff, there would be no increase on the cells and no step movement for those folks as well. It's assumed in this example that the district would pick up the 1.8% increase in health insurance that we were notified of. And so, again, that includes the district picking up that portion of the health insurance. And again, this was the board, you all appealed for this wage and salary freeze. And and again, it's subject to negotiations with our union folks. So.
That's a summary of the information we've prepared for you, and looking forward to June 9th. If there is any other information that you need, we would like to know that so that we can get it prepared and ready for you.
Mary, can I ask another question of Tim?
Sure.
Mostly?
Sure.
And maybe some of you guys know, but you know, the thing is, we keep talking about the TIF district funds, and you know, having seen this recession sort of coming along for a couple of years before we have come to the point where we are now, or whatever. And I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think is that the way these things have culminated, it's not like sort of some secret triangle where we didn't see it coming and we got hit in the face with it. It's that I think we could have weathered the whole loss of state aid if we didn't have a 9% unemployment rate in our community.
and we're kind of, you can raise the mill rate a little bit and have not a dramatic increase, but now we're looking at people with, unemployment and foreclosures and all kinds of things who really can't bear the brunt of that, the gap in the state aid plus the, all the other things. So I guess I feel like that's where we come to this position where we're looking at $1.5 million that we need to cut out of our budget this year and certainly next year. And what I think is, I fully expect that this economy is going to turn itself around, and this is not going to be our long-term situation financially in our district. I think there are a lot of districts across the state who have been losing revenues for years. They've been losing students. They have scraped the bottom of the barrel. They're cutting their arts programs. They're cutting their athletics. They're cutting their music. Everything is gone but the very basics. And they're in the same position we are, and their budgets are still in the same position, and their taxpayers are also experiencing, even harder hardships than what they've already gone through as a district. I think for us, a year or two will go by, and we'll weather this out if we all stick together and we all sort of do our piece of it and say, for 2 years we can, or even 3 maybe, we can kind of go with a really bare bones and we can take some cuts. But we're going to come out of this really well as a district compared to a lot of people in the state who are really not going to come out of it the way we're going to. So I have hopefulness, even though we're making deep cuts now, that these aren't things that are mentoring and our professional development and these kinds of things aren't going away forever. We're just cutting back so that we can make it through a hard time with our taxpayers. Am I right about that? Is that what everybody else is sort of thinking about this?
Well, I think the one thing to remember that, and we have talked about it before, is that it is difficult to make the cuts and then bring them all back the next year. We probably would bring them back over time. And again, there are different factors that are affecting us. It's not only the TIF, the TIF valuation coming on and going on to our formula, because we've been talking about that for some time. It's also our student growth has dropped off significantly. And if you looked at our trends in the past of a 3.4% increase, all of a sudden it dropped off very quickly. And that's not, and all of the other economic factors and data that come out, such as the ramp up of unemployment, and we started to see that January, February for our area. We started to see the accelerated unemployment rates. So there are a lot of things that are happening, and they continue to happen. This is a dynamic process that we're dealing with, just as well as at the state level. The budget deficit was, I believe, somewhere started out in the 3s. Now over time, we're up to $6.6 billion. So, but again, I think, too, when we look at long-term, we have a 2035 census that shows the county growing at a tremendous rate, about 168%. Whether that holds true or not, even if it's half that, long term, that's where it helps us is in student growth. And so, I think that's light at the end of the tunnel. And we've heard some economic data today on jobs nationwide that some folks are feeling that we are getting near the end of this. So,
I have a question. So, Tim, what's the with the operations cuts on here? What's the mill rate? What would be the mill rate increase without the freeze of salaries from last year?
we still be looking at, without the freeze of salaries, we'd still be looking at the 2.5% to 3% increase on the mill rate.
And then if we were able to do the freeze, what would the mill rate be?
If we're able to do the freeze, would that bring us down to 0? On the projections that we have right now, based on the numbers we have right now.
And how would that affect the proposed personnel reductions, layoffs? Can we avoid those if we were to achieve a
across the board freeze?
I would have to say yes, that if we could achieve that freeze, yes.
It certainly is the board's final decision. And I guess the caution that we just have to keep in mind is the state budget deficit and the increasing state budget deficit. We don't know how that's going to affect us. So the assumptions that Tim has used up to this point have not included the new information that we have about the budget deficit. And from every indication, we will lose more state aid as a result of that. So we just have to keep that in mind because we don't have any more information at the present time.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? If not, we'll move on to topics for action. And the first topic is the appointment of the 2009 CISA Convention representative. I think we appoint one person. Is that correct? And this is, in my view, a very prestigious post. So I'd entertain some folks that might be willing to serve in this position. I know Barb was entertained the appointment last year and couldn't do it. Has that changed at all, Barb? Or? Okay. Are you in a better position now? Would you be willing to? Okay. Any other, if anyone else is clamoring to do this, we could do it as we did with the officers. We can. Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion to have Barb appointed as our CISA
So
convention.
moved.
We have a motion by Cindy.
Second.
Second by Mark. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Thanks, Barb, for agreeing to do that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is facility use fees. Tim?
Okay. The Facilities and Grounds Committee reviewed our current structure for facility fees, and those are rental fees for use of the building from community organizations and non-resident organizations. And before you, there's a table that lays out the different priorities for our different categories of rental, and then the different fees associated with those categories. And the recommendation that came out of Facilities and Grounds was to change the priority 4. If you look all the way on the right-hand side of the column, recommendation for priority 4 would be to increase the fees priority 4 from $40 to $50 for classroom rental. Cafeteria would go from $75 to $100. And I won't read through all of those, but you can see the increases there. And in addition to those recommendations, the additional recommendations would be looking at priorities 2 through 4 for the high school auditorium. The fees would add, the following menu of fees would be added, and that sound system use and lighting system use would be the actual charge to the technician for the work that they do to ready those systems. And then charge for a piano, and that would be excluding a grand piano, $50. The second recommendation is the priorities 2 through 4, again for the auditorium, and that would be to have a damage deposit that equals the base charge. So in an example, if it's a priority 2 rental, then the damage deposit would be $100, priority 3 $300, and priority 4 $500. And that's, again, on some of the nonprofits and the small organizations, just in keeping in line with their ability to come up with those funds.
Any questions for Tim? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the facilities use charge.
So moved.
We have a motion by Tom, a second by Cindy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Next item is student fees. Tim?
Okay, then at the Finance Committee, a review of student fees was done, and the recommendation coming from Finance is the student parking, the annual fee is currently $50, and that would be raised to $75. And then athletic fees would go from $30 per activity with the 120 max to $40 per activity with the 150 max. And the committee also reviewed charges from neighboring districts to get an idea of where we lined up.
Questions, comments for Tim?
Just a question, Tim, about how are these fees used? Are these fees designated for certain costs that are related to, for example, the parking costs or replacement, or
These particular fees, the student parking and the athletic fees, go back into the general fund to offset total operations.
Any other questions, comments?
What about lower income students who want to participate? How will that be handled?
We would do that. We would handle it the same way that we do now. So most of those fees are free or reduced based on the free and reduced lunch applications. So those fees would be waived.
Thank you.
Okay. If no other comments, questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the student fees.
So move.
We have a motion by Brian.
Second.
Second by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. We'll move on to the school age care program fees. Nancy?
Okay, this information shows you a 4-year history of per session, and a session is up to 2.5 hours in length, before school, after school. It also shows you a 4-year history for summer school age care, and summer school age care is can be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 12 hours. Over the 4 years, and prior to that, because the program's been in place for longer than 4 years, there typically has been a stable fee for service. The rate increase of 25 cents per session is recommended from $5.75 to $6, and it would still be anywhere from $1 less than area to close to $3 per session less than other area providers. During the summer, we would recommend increasing the fee. We have 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, anywhere from $1 to $15 per that length of time. We would still be well below other area comparisons. The fee increase we feel is reasonable. Not all of our parents of school-age students take advantage of this service. Of course, overhead charges are incurred, custodial, utilities, etc. And we do need to offset those expenses for the total district, and the fee structure is the way to do that. But we still see this as a real bargain for the parents that choose to participate. So we would ask you to approve these fee increases, starting with the summer school care program in 2009.
Any questions, comments for Nancy?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we approve the fee increases to the school age care program.
We have a motion by Mark.
Second.
Second by Barb. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Nancy, do you want to continue with the police school
Can I
liaison?
recuse myself for
Okay.
conflict of interest?
Thanks, Cindy. Wait a moment here until Cindy leaves the room. Okay, I think we can go for it.
And you have in your board material the proposed contract. It's several pages in length. At the March board meeting, the administration recommended that the board deny a contract offer from the city for a 2-year renewal of the police school liaison officer agreement. The city's proposal at that time was, we felt, too costly for the district, costing significantly more than almost all comparison districts pay for police school liaison officer service, and providing 1 month less of service than we currently receive. At the March meeting, the board denied the city's contract offer and referred the matter back to a committee of the board for further negotiations. The current contract proposal of the city before you tonight essentially falls between what the board earlier authorized the administration to pursue and what the city proposed in March. The administration recommends that the board act tonight to approve this agreement, and if approved, the agreement would continue in effect for subsequent years unless mutually amended by the two parties.
Just one addition to that, it also would take action by the city council.
And subject to action by the city council, yes.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
I have several, I guess. And help me, Nancy, if I'm off on some of these numbers. Up until this year, we've split 50-50 for the 10-month school year, right?
We did.
We did, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that there was, obviously, the city is looking for additional revenue, and I believe our first proposal was to split 50-50 for the 12 months. Is that
That's
is that
correct.
Right? Okay. And that my numbers show that to be about an 18% increase. Is that something close? I'm not the best math guy, but I think that's something close. And I know the city initially wanted us to pay 75%, and which I think was something just under 50%. And even this one-third, two-thirds split comes out to about I think a 35% increase. Here's my. Am I right on that?
You were close on the 48%.
48%. Okay,
mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I guess a couple issues. First, I have a philosophical objection to us paying more than 50%, even if there wasn't monetary issues. This benefits both the city of Hudson and the school district of Hudson. And I'm not even sure how they may have come up with a 75% figure if they were using school days or something like that. Even that, to me, would be a fallacy. They apparently would assume that any time spent here on the Hudson High School campus is solely to the benefit of the school district. And as far as I know, our police liaison is involved in the activity related to law enforcement, so that's clearly the mission of the city of Hudson. But having put aside that, and again, 50-50 is, I think, just what it should be. And not mistaken as well, that is the prevailing rate still, is it not, Nancy? 50-50.
It is, of the comparison districts,
Okay.
although there are others that
There
pay
are
more.
some exceptions, I understand.
There are some
Right.
exceptions.
But 2 weeks ago, we just decided to eliminate some staff. We're taking a media specialist out. We're losing our drama program. We have other staff, layoffs and reductions. So I know we don't have the money. I know that because I know, as I think Mr. Holland put very well, that this administration has looked long and hard at all options before reducing staff. So, based on both of those things, the philosophical argument that this should be a shared expense between the city and the school district, and the fact that we don't have additional dollars to be tossed at the city of Hudson. I can understand them aggressively pursuing additional revenue. That's what they should do probably for the city of Hudson. We need to be just as aggressive in maintaining our budget and our financial integrity. So it'd be my proposal to offer a motion to go back and negotiate a more equitable agreement. We have time fellow board members. We have an agreement, I believe, that's going to run through the end of June. So we don't have to do this now. This is not in the best interest of the school district to have a 2/3, 1/3 split with the city of Hudson. 50-50 is absolutely fair and equitable for both parties, and I urge you strongly to consider that.
Okay.
And if there are no other comments, I would make that motion right now, that this be sent back. I guess it was the Finance Committee that was involved in negotiation. That would, I guess, be up to the President, but it'd be my motion that this be sent back and negotiated further.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? A second for the motion. If not, the motion fails. So, any other questions, comments for Nancy regarding the agreement?
I would like to make a comment to address Mark's point. Certainly we agree on budget issues. And I think we also agree on the importance of having a police school liaison officer at the high school. And I know the board has supported that. So the matter is the dollars to support that, and I know that's an issue, Mark, that you're concerned about. But I do believe that this is the, as far as we can go with the city council in relationship to that, based on the prior work, and has been negotiated. So really, still they would have to approve this, and if our board does not approve this, then I'm going to assume from the conversations that I've had that we will not have a police school liaison officer. That would be my assumption based on all the interaction we've had up to date.
Nancy, question regarding I don't necessarily need to know the compensation. I don't know if that's in here. But is this a fixed compensation over a two-year period? What I'm getting at is...
I'll tell you.
Do we know from over the period of the contract what our ongoing obligation is going to be, or could we conceivably be paying, 60% of some unknown number in the future?
Well, Exhibit A in your agreement lays out the cost of the salary and benefits and equipment charges. So you can see a total cost for the position for 2009 and 2010. Okay. And then in 2009, they've proposed, and it's embedded in the contract language, you can see that from January through mid-March, we would pay 42%, and then from mid-March to June, which would be the end of June, we would be paying 60%, and then from July through December, we would pay 67%. That's 2009. So it's a phase in of our larger obligation. And then in 2010, we would have a clear 67% or 2/3 of the figure that you see on Exhibit A. Okay. So it is a fixed amount that we would expect to be billed.
Okay, good.
Just along those lines, Nancy, did our school council review this contract?
Our school what?
Our school attorney.
Yes.
You did review this contract?
Yes.
Okay. I read in here that the school district is responsible for all overtime. So does that mean football games, other events where...
If we were to request the officer to provide that service, yes.
Is that what we do?
That's what we do right now.
Okay. So
now that right now, though, is not part of... it's right now not part of this total cost. If the high school requests or the athletic department requests the officer's services, it comes out of that budget. That's where it's charged. That's where it's always been charged.
Okay. But it's the school district that would pay the full cost
of the if we are the initiator of the request for service, yes.
Okay. Well, I guess I would just tell my fellow board members that certainly does not seem to be the district's advantage. If any police department here doesn't think they should have a police officer at an athletic event where there might be a couple of thousand people, I think that'd be pretty irresponsible. But now they have us on the hook for that entirely, unless it's whoever blinks
well,
first.
That's not a new.
We currently pay 100% already?
Mm-hmm, we do.
Okay.
That's been true historically, that part of it at least. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to me, that is also not an equitable arrangement. I cannot believe that is in the city of Hudson. That is a major gathering of a couple of thousand people, lots of teenagers, and we are paying 100% for law enforcement. They're getting their money out of us, folks. Okay.
Yeah. I believe there are times where there are multiple officers, and we're not paying for all of them.
Okay.
We'd be paying for our police school liaison officers over time.
And what will the percentage increase be? Now, I came up with a number, but let's see how close I am to yours.
The first year is 47%, and the second year is 71%.
47%?
The previous in March, it was 91%. So it's a 20% reduction.
All right.
In 2010.
Okay.
From what they previously offered to us. And it's also, the first offer was 9 months, this is 9.5.
Okay. So we're going to 48% the first year increase?
47.
And 70-something the second. Mm-hmm. Okay, what is that in dollars?
In the first year, it's $17,472, and in the second year, it's $26,690.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Brian.
I don't want my fellow board member to be flapping in the wind here, but so Mark, I appreciate your turning over every rock to help us with our budget issues. And I can appreciate your concern that you feel like we're being taken advantage of. So on the record, I appreciate that. However, I do support this because every negotiation you need a next best alternative, and I don't want to walk from this thing. I think having an armed police officer in our high school is very, very important to us. And I don't really like how we got here, Mark, but the fact is I don't want a rental or a security guard. I want an armed police officer in our high school. For security reasons, safety, I just think it's what we should be doing. So I don't like how we got here. We are here, and I'm supportive of this to move forward.
I'm sorry, I just want to respond. I absolutely agree with the police school liaison officer. It's all about the dollars and cents.
I understand.
Absolutely. And again, I think we both benefit from it. I think there's a reason that the prevailing rate is 50-50. I think that in most cases, both parties recognize mutual benefit. I know that's the arrangement we have with the YMCA with regard to the tunnel and those expenses. Maybe at some point somebody's going to look at that. But I think when there are parties to a situation like this where they're both benefiting, and apparently we had a greater desire than the city of Hudson to move forward with this. But I know where you're coming from. I am unhappy about it.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And you are aware that this has been in the making for several months, and we've been at the table with the city and the mayor, and we've been trying to work through this, and this is where we're at. This seems to be the best that we're able to negotiate with them. So,
Mr. President,
this is a top. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn.
can I make a motion to approve the police school liaison program agreement with the city of Hudson?
We have a motion by Lynn. Second by Brian. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion's approved. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Oh, okay. Get Cindy back in the room here. Welcome back, Cindy.
Thanks.
We're moving on to the next topic for action, the sustainability resolution. Mary?
We are a member of the Intergovernmental Advisory Council, and the Intergovernmental Advisory Council consists of the school district, the city of Hudson, the town of St. Joseph, the town of Troy, the village of North Hudson, and the county. We meet together to discuss items of mutual interest in our region, and we have come together on a resolution adopting a framework of sustainable community principles. And I noticed the title, we have the wrong principles, so we'll have to make that change. But we have come together as this intergovernmental group. St. Croix County is not a part of the partnership on this resolution, and that's because their borders extend beyond the partners that I just talked about and involve other municipalities. So with the municipal partners, we are each recommending endorsement of this resolution to our particular groups and hoping that the Hudson School District and the other partners will approve this. The City of Hudson has already endorsed and approved this resolution. For the school district, it continues our support of sustainable practices that we have essentially initiated with Rivercrest Elementary, and it supports sustainability and environmental practices that protect our natural resources. It is a partnership and collaboration for mutual benefit, particularly because environmentally friendly practices don't respect the boundaries between the city of Hudson and the town of Troy and our other municipalities. It also supports certainly HSD 2025 and our graduate learner outcome of environmental sustainability. The resolution really commits the district to considering environmental sustainability and environmentally sound practices while making decisions. It does not force us to make different decisions, but it certainly puts us in a position to consider that as we make those decisions. And then it also puts us in a position to collaborate with our neighbors and the other partners in areas of mutual benefit for our entire community. And the strength of this partnership, I believe, is strengthened through this resolution. So we recommend your endorsement of this resolution, and I know the Facilities and Grounds Committee also discussed it. And Tom, maybe you want to address that.
Yeah, we discussed this at the Facilities and Grounds Committee meeting, and felt that it's not there's really nothing binding about this, but it certainly isn't presented in the attitude of cooperation and understanding around sustainability. And our committee, Facilities and Grounds Committee, unanimously recommends approval of this resolution.
Any other comments, questions for either Tom or Mary? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the sustainability resolution.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Brian, a second by Cindy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Next item are the consent items that you have before you, and if someone wants to review the total financial amount.
Mr. President, move to approve the consent items, including moving that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,661,280.89.
We have a motion by Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved.
President Chernohoy,
Yes.
may I just recognize in voice that the board just approved the retirement of Arla Railsback, who has taught for over 30 years in the Hudson School District, and previously approved the last board meeting's material, at which time you acted on the retirement of Alice Tracy, who has been an educational assistant, both special education and regular education for over 15 years in the Hudson School District.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy, for pointing that out. And certainly, we appreciate the years of service those individuals have committed to the district. Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. Finance Committee, Brian?
Thanks. Finance Committee met on April 21st. Cover a few topics. One of them of interest tonight is the health insurance claims data and response on the WAA trust. This is a pretty significant issue. You know, we're all believers in competitive bids and are in the best interest of everyone in the district. And right now with the WAA trust, we're simply just trying to get some information. That's all we're trying to do. And you know, I didn't really like the response with our almost threatening our employees that just by giving us information, they could potentially raise our health insurance rates, and that's not fair to our employees. And but with everything going on right now in the district, we decided it was the best thing to do is just table that for a while, and you know, hit that another time. There's just too much other things going on, so we decided to just table that issue for right now. So I have asked for someone from WA Trust to come to our Finance Committee and talk about why they have that procedure and why it's an interest of us as a customer. So.
Can we be really clear about that, that we ask for information so that we can do what our citizens ask, and that is bid out our insurance to a better provider? And what we have is a provider that is basically holding our teachers hostage.
Yeah, that's exactly. So we're going to have WA explain that to us, why they do that. So.
Yeah, well, I really think that they need to explain that to our citizens as well, and our teachers.
So anyway, so that's the we table that for right now. It wasn't the right time to proceed with that. So and then we also talked about the fees that we've voted on tonight.
Okay. Any questions, comments for Brian?
I just wanted to make a comment. You received a petition in regard to health insurance from employees and asking that our request for data be rescinded, which we did. But there was a misunderstanding in that petition that our employees would be assuming any additional cost from our health care provider, WEA Trust. And that isn't correct. We have an increase of approximately 1.8%, and the district will be assuming that cost. And that's below the cap that we have for health insurance costs.
Okay. Anything else, Brian?
Nope.
Okay, we'll move on to the Personnel Committee.
Thanks, Dan. Personnel Committee met last week, and we had discussion regarding 09-10 staffing. A lot of talk about the controversial positions that we discussed earlier. I don't think we need to go into that farther. And then had closed session for the consideration of employment compensation of both our union and non-union employee groups.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We'll move on to the next committee. Is that?
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Facilities and Grounds. Tom?
The Facilities and Grounds Committee met on May 6th. All members were present. There were 4 agenda items, 2 of which we've already covered tonight, so I won't go through those. That was the review of the facility usage fees and the intergovernmental sustainability resolution. The 2 other agenda items included measures we're taking to prevent the spread of germs. Of course, with the H1N1 issue that was before us and may still be, we wanted to take some proactive approach to addressing any, heightening the effort to prevent germ spreads. So we've upgraded and updated disinfectant cleaning to handrails, doorknobs, tabletops, things like that, as Jim Staskell has reported, as well as educated, our teachers around this issue, our parents and so forth, and have worked with the local health agencies about this issue. And I have to give credit to our nurse Sharon, and I'm sorry I don't have her last name.
Altenberg.
Thank you. Did everybody hear that? Okay, I didn't want to repeat it because I'd probably screw it up. But she has developed a protocol for the identification of symptoms, which has really been used community-wide now as a result. So we really want to give her credit for that initiative. To the point that she's been able to identify what is suspect, what is probable, and what is confirmed in this protocol. And from that then, when it gets to the probable stage, it is sent for testing for that H1N1 virus down in Atlanta. So we certainly appreciate her good work in that regard. Along the same lines, the second agenda item was around the use of hand sanitizers for germ prevention. Of course, our teaching staff work with our children regularly on hand washing and that practice. But the Center of Disease Control indicates that the next best thing to hand washing is hand sanitizers. And we have, as a committee, have looked at different options along with our staff about adding hand sanitizers to our facilities. They have done, the staff, meaning the staff, has done a thorough job of looking at different levels of coverage. Level 1 being complete coverage, meaning as many as 453 dispensers district-wide at a cost, an annual cost of about $16,000 a year for the purchase of these dispensers. Level 2 being multi-use areas, limited to multi-use areas plus, with about 220 dispensers district-wide, 50 in the high school, 50 in the middle school, 20 each in the elementary schools. And at an annual cost of either $13,000 for 180 days of use, or 109 days of use would be $8,000 a year. And then level 3 would be the lowest level, and that would include the cafeterias plus 95 dispensers used, 20 in the high school, 15 in the middle school, 10 each in the elementary school, at an annual cost at 180 days of use, $9,900, and at a 109-day use, $6,000. The discussion was around recommending, and I guess we're still looking at this, but we're leaning towards level 2, the 220 dispensers, the level 2 being the multi-purpose use areas and plus, and at an annual use or number of contact days, 109 versus the 108, total cost at $8,000. But we were looking at this, and it's still kind of under consideration because we would go this direction if this particular product qualified for the number of parts per liter and all that stuff that I don't understand completely. But that's what we discussed, unless there's anything that the committee members can add to it.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that report. We do have a citizen's request to speak. A couple of them. Okay. Let's start with Kevin Courtney. Wishes to speak on the police liaison officer. Kevin, if you could state your name.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Courtney. I live at 816 Green Street.
Kevin, can you wait just a second since you're wanting to speak on the police liaison officer as one of the items?
Yes.
I gotta go.
Cindy's going to recuse herself from this discussion.
Already been approved, hasn't it? It's already been approved. Why did
I
she have to
realize
leave?
that, but go ahead.
My name's Kevin Courtney. I live at 816 Green Street. I have 2 children at EP Rock Elementary. I've always thought that the Hudson schools were an excellent school. I've really started getting a little more active as they've gotten older. This is my first board meeting, and I have to tell you how embarrassed I am that you would, without really taking into consideration a little bit more, the police liaison contract, the increases. as soon as you said the numbers for the 2 years, the first one being a little over 17,000 and the second one being a little over 26,000, I immediately picked up my staff positions. The last two positions are a little over 17,000 and a little over 26,000. I can't believe that we can't do that math a little bit better. You've already approved it, there's nothing we can do about it, but the city of Hudson, the city council should be embarrassed, and you should be embarrassed for accepting that contract. And that's really all I have to say.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Next request is from Scott. Scott Ellingson.
Scott Ellingson, 718 6th Street. I had some comments on the financial reports. Just want to remind everybody that first of all, I do appreciate all the efforts to reduce the layoffs. I know that's been a real struggle, and I really appreciate that. With the stimulus money, I want to remind all of us that the stimulus money is meant to stimulate the economy and economic growth. That means jobs. And so as we ponder these things going into June, we got to remember that the Department of Education guidelines say that the stimulus money is to prevent devastating cuts to education, to prevent layoffs, and to save and create jobs. And it's really important to keep that in mind. I know it says special education, but as was pointed out, special education and regular education certainly overlap, and that certainly is true with our libraries, as we talked about before. As far as the use of the cash balance history and just the general cash situation, the budget of the district in general, I want to remind everybody that last September at the annual meeting, it was approved a 6.6% increase in the mill rate. And then later on in October, as the economy is well sliding downward and knowing that things are going to be tough, miraculously we came up with this 0% increase in the mill rate, which meant that we lost $1.6 million. We chose to levy $1.6 million less. And I think that $1.6 million right now would go a long ways. And also, I want to keep in mind that as far as the layoffs go, out of concern for taxpayers and their ability to pay taxes, it's kind of ironic to me that we choose to take away the ability of some district employees to earn money, and with it, their ability to pay taxes, not to mention limiting their ability to purchase local goods and services, and obviously the impact that would have on our economy. Finally, a lot of these one-time funds, the stimulus and the, going into the cash balance and all that kind of thing, we need to have a mill rate plan in place or the hole gets deeper. I'm very, very concerned about that hole. And as I said before, I really think it's important to keep our eyes on the vision for excellence in this district. Okay, we need to have a revenue plan to support the vision. We need to have a revenue plan that goes beyond just 1 year. And finally, just want to keep in mind that as we talk about all these finances, you can't tell a second grader to come back next year when the economy is better. We have an obligation to provide the best possible education to children today with the resources that have been made available today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Any further comments? Tim?
One thing on the school liaison officer, we are looking at, as we continue to work through budget adjustments and reductions, we're looking at the possibility of moving that officer position under community ed. We're looking at practices from other districts and the intent of those community ed funds. So that's a very strong possibility that would be moved over.
And given that, we could not support the other position with the same dollars in that community ed fund.
Right.
The other thing I would like to address is Scott's comments about the mill rate that was approved at the annual meeting At the annual meeting, the electorate that attends, oftentimes a very small turnout as it was this last year, approves the budget. And it's a preliminary approval of the budget, as the board knows. And the board later certifies the budget based on changes. Between the annual meeting and the certification of the budget, we receive the estimates that we're using, or assumptions. We receive the actual information, and then the mill rate is determined with actual information. We may add things to the budget during that time period. For example, if we have an enrollment increase, which we have at the middle school, and have added positions, that sometimes happens in between that time period. But what happened in this instant, generally, is the revenue was increased. Revenue sources were increased, and as a result, it reduced the mill rate. So during that annual meeting, what's really happening is the people in attendance are doing a preliminary approval of the budget itself. And the budget itself had an increase, and it has had an increase over the last, is it 5 or 6 years, Tim, of approximately 5%?
Yeah, if you look at the average budget expenditure increase, it's been on the average probably between 5 and 6% per year.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
I have one comment.
Brian?
As we're looking at the mill rate increase and things like that, and I think there's some comments made tonight about trying to reduce the number of layoffs. I just want to make sure we just continue to focus on the fact of, when we talk revenue, we're talking taxes to taxpayers. And I think the question right now we need to ask ourselves is, should the taxpayers of Hudson pay for a wage increase for the district employees? And I think right now to ask the taxpayers to pay extra taxes and increase for a wage increase is just not the right thing to do right now. So I want to focus on that. The second thing I want to do is we're working through a challenging issue right now. And there's going to be disagreements with the board, with the administration, with the employees. I'm just making a call as we go through this together that we are going to have disagreements, but that we work together and we don't pit the administration from the employees and that's not to say we're not going to agree on everything or disagree on everything, but I just want to make sure we're working together as one organization and not set up, not set up an area that is non-productive. So, which it's not. I just want to make sure on the record. So,
thanks, Brian. And I agree. I'm very proud of this district. Having kids that have gone through the school system here. This district has a long tradition of being very financially strong, and it's not by accident. We've worked hard to get to where we're at today, and we'll get through this. I mean, as Brian pointed out, through working together as a board, as administration, as all of the staff of this district, we will get creative, and we'll persevere through this difficult point. But I would echo Brian's remarks that we can't operate in a vacuum. We need to continue the dialogue, and hopefully this year will just be an aberration. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.851C for the purpose of considering employment and compensation of non-union employees, and E, for the purpose of deliberating to prepare for negotiations with all union employee groups. I'll entertain a motion. Do we have a
second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Brian. We'll have a voice vote.
Crimmins, aye. Van Loenen, aye.
Chernahoy, aye.
Holland, aye. Kaiser shot, aye.
Bell, aye.
Robson, aye.
Thanks, everyone.